I will start by creating the links. We already learned how to do so. I will do it in the authentication component, which is the parent component for this whole authentication feature. In here, I want to have a header with a class of row and spacing, which is a custom class which, well, you guess it, adds some spacing so that it doesn't sit directly on top of other elements. And in there, a nav with the well-known col MD8 column width here and the offset to center it. And then inside of this nav, I want to have an unordered list with nav tabs. Remember, in the main header here, we used nav pills, which is a Bootstrap class to get this pills look here. Now I want to have this tabs look to give us multiple tabs. And this is the CSS class I have to use, again, provided by Bootstrap. In there, it's time to set up some list items with nested links. And I will get rid of the ref attribute because I will soon add a router link again. Here I want to have a tab for sign in up, for sign in, and for logout, of course. So what this should give me is, when I save this and reload the auth page, we get the 3 tabs here. Of course they don't work and it doesn't look too beautiful because we don't see anything else, but that is what I'm going to work next when I set up my routes and load them. Now you already know we need a place to load them with the router outlet. So let's add another row here with some spacing. And in here, add the router outlet directive. Now you might say we already use router outlet in the app component here. Now I'm using it again in the authentication component. How does Angular 2 know what to render where? It's very simple. Routes set up in the app routing file in our root router here will get loaded on the highest possible level here, will get loaded in the topmost router outlet, which sits in our app component here, in the template of our app component. Nested routes, as I will create them in a second, will be loaded in the component where I nested them. But to make this a bit clearer, let's start creating these routes so that we can see what I mean. I will create a new file in the auth folder named auth routes ts. Here I will again create a constant named, let's say, auth routes, which is of type routes, which needs to be imported from @AngularRouter. This is an array of routes, and you already know this from the app routing file. This one here, this array is the same. So in here, I again define some JavaScript objects, setting up some nested routes. But right now, Angular 2 doesn't know that they are nested, of course. I set them up in the same way as before. The important thing about the path here is this path is now to be seen relative from /auth, because I will soon set them up to be child routes of the auth route. So all paths I enter now are auth/ and then this path. So here I want to have a signup path, which in the end will be auth/signup, because I will add it as a child route. This is important to keep in mind. So here, this will be the signup path, and I want to load the signup component in this case, which needs to be imported in this file. I will duplicate this twice to also have a sign in and a logout route here, where I have my sign in component, which needs to be imported at the top, and my logout component, which also needs to be imported. These are my 3 child routes. I also will set up a redirection here for the empty path, which again is not really empty, it's /auth/nothing. In which case I don't want to load a component, but let's say I want to redirect to signup. And now here it's important, not /signup. This would load localhost/signup, which doesn't exist. Instead I want to append it to the currently active path, which is /auth at this point, because /auth/nothing. And then I want to append /signup to go to the second route here. Of course, I also need to set up path match full to not get the issue of always getting redirected, because there is always an empty path somewhere in the path. So these are my routes. And now you could think I again use router module and then for root. But this is actually not the case. I don't want to create a new router module. I already have one. I want to add these routes to the existing routes as child routes for this route. Well, that were a lot of routes. To do so, I will simply export this constant here. Export. And then in my main routing file, I want to add them as child routes to this route, so that Angular 2 then knows they should be appended to this path and loaded in this component, which happens to be the component where I have my router outlet. To do this, I can add a new built-in property named children. This takes an array of routes, and guess what? This is exactly what I set up in the auth routes file, an array of routes. So I can simply add auth routes, also add the import here, as a value for this property, and this registers these routes here as child routes for my /auth path here. And this is also the explanation why Angular 2 will load them in my authentication component here, because this is simply the component which gets loaded here, which now has the child routes. Of course, the missing piece is to now hook up these links, which is easy, again with router link, and then here an array where I want to navigate to sign up. Not /sign up, because I don't want to go to localhost /sign up. I want to go to auth sign up. If I now copy this to my other two links here, sign in and log out, and then also add the router link active directive here to style the active link like we did on our main header. If I save this and then reload my application, you now see the sign-up route is selected by default, and if I switch, you can see I can navigate to all these routes. The styling is of course off for sign up and sign in because I haven't added my Bootstrap grid classes, but you see the routing works great. I can still go to the messenger and back to the authentication where I now have these tabs to be used. So that is great. The missing part before we then finally start adding some backend functionality is to set up the sign up and sign in form, and for that I'm going to show you a different approach of creating forms in Angular 2.